Yeah. Welcome, everyone. This is the July 25th, 2023 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I will call this meeting to order at 1:03. First, we'll begin with the introductions of our commissioners. I'll begin since I'm talking. My name is Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large.
My name is Graham Johnson. I'm a preservation project manager nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Nick Lucianis. I'm an architect and developer. I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Good afternoon, I'm Erin Hummel. I'm a landscape architect. I was nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff. All right, thank you. So next, we'll go over some quick audio clips for those of you who are joining us virtually. I won't read the entire slide word for word, but we have some tips here on the screen that help you make sure that your audio settings are set up. You can add background noise suppression, test your speaker and microphone and adjust their volume outputs. And then for those of you presenting or public commenters, when it's your turn to speak, you will want to make sure that you're unmuted by clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom of the screen. And then you can also expand the menu for the microphone to adjust different settings on that. If you still have audio challenges, you can always switch to your phone for audio. And those of you joining us personally, we kind of have this back and forth of talking virtually to those online, but we try to do our best for y'all as well. So thanks for your understanding. All right. So at the beginning of every meeting, we have a public comment period. And this is a period of time. This is a period of time for those of you who would like to just make a comment about historic preservation generally in the city of Denver. This isn't related to any of our projects that we have in our agenda. When we have each project in front of us, that will be a time for you to raise your hand and make a public comment then if you'd like to. Do we have anyone here with us today or virtually that would like to make a general public comments?
No hands raised.
Doesn't look like it. So we'll move on to our consent agenda. These are routine design review items that are recommended for commission approval by staff without discussion. Applicants with items passed on the consent agenda should coordinate separately with your staff person to receive the certificate of appropriateness. There is no public comment for those items on the consent agenda. So I'll first quickly announce our 4 consent projects. These are application 2023-COA-260 at 817 North Grace Street in Morgan subdivision. Application 2023-COA-265 at 1640 East 3rd Avenue in Country Club. 2023-TAXC-006 at 101 Baylor Street in Country Club. And application 2021-TAXC-009 at 2608 River Drive. Commissioners, do you have any, do you need to recuse yourself from any items on the consent agenda, or are there any projects that you would like to shift to design review to discuss in the brief? Therefore, does anyone would anyone like to make a motion to approve those 4 consent agenda items? Since I've announced them, you don't need to go through each project number again.
Chair, I'll move to agree with the consent.
Thank you, Graham.
However we want to describe it.
Very good, thank you. And is that Aaron to second? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Great, the consent agenda items are passed. And as I mentioned, you can work with your staff to continue on with your project as needed. And if you would like to stay on the meeting for the rest of the agenda, you're welcome to, but if not, you're welcome to hop off. Okay, then we will move on to the design review. We have 5 projects for us to consider today. The first is project number 2023-COA-211 at 2635 West 33rd Avenue in Potter Highlands Historic District. This is Crystal's project, but I believe Jesse will be reviewing it for us. Yes, sorry, I will, let me go over the design review process quickly. So, I'll first introduce the project. Staff will go over the application and their recommendation for commissioners. At that time, we may have questions for the staff. And then we'll follow that with the applicant's presentation, which is limited to 10 minutes for the entire applicant team. If you have any questions for the applicant, you can ask the applicant after their presentation. After that, we'll open it up for the public comment period, where each person who would like to make a comment has up to 2 minutes to speak. After that, we'll wrap up the summary of the project with any staff clarifications if needed, and then we'll move into deliberation for a motion and vote. So take it away, Jesse.
So this is 2635 West 33rd Avenue. It was constructed in the 1950s and is contributing structure to the Colorado Hills Historic District. The applicant is proposing a 1-story side addition and alterations to the existing structure. Here you can see a site plan showing the location of the 1-story addition as well as photos of the existing condition of the home. The commission previously listened to the application on June 20th and asked the applicant for additional information about the proposed brick veneer, which has been provided in the application. Here you can see the proposed elevations for the alterations to the home as well as the addition. The applicant is requesting to make several alterations to the property, including replacement of the windows, damage beyond repair, addition of a brick smear with the existing damaged brick, replacement of cedar shingles at areas where it has been damaged, and repair and change the front porch and addition of new rails. So additionally, the applicant is requesting to add a small 1-story side addition elevation of the contributing structure. The applicants will be demolishing a small portion of the elevation wall within the 1-story side addition. The portion of being demolished is where previous alterations have been or have happened to the structure and is currently attached with the new block infill. The new addition will not damage the existing cladding material on the contributing structure. The new addition will be clad in smooth composite with paneling and stacked on between dark red brick. Per the commission's request for more information, the applicant has indicated type in color premix mortar for the brick smear, which you can see here on the left. They've already tested it on the house, which you can see on the top left. And they've also provided photos of the previous conditions and repair work that they've already completed. The application also includes a history of this method, additional names it is owned by, and the reasoning as to why this was a chosen material. Staff is supportive of the brick smear so long as it is, and one thing that we would like to point out is in the application for the staff group, it does call for the material to be called out on the materials of the application. And that was what's in the condition from the staff. Staff is willing to do that, and that was willing to do that. On the material page should be highlighted in red, solid in red. And we are now working with this.
Jesse, commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? We can hear from the applicants. As a reminder to the applicant, you have up to 10 minutes collectively, if there's more than one of you, to present. And when you are ready, you can unmute yourself and please or join us in person. And if you would please start with your name and address.
My name is Cameron Kruger, 3 South Campus Street. Yes, so the majority of the project is the site addition using an existing CMU opening in the facade. I'm just gonna kind of jump to the point where we're stuck on here, which is this brick schmear. One of the comments commissioners brought up was the name. There's a few names for this that we've called out to kind of help understand this. The most common name I'm finding nowadays is called a bag wash finish. They can also call it a lime wash, wet bagging, German schmear, mortar wash. They all slightly different things, but have a similar effect. We were asked why we chose this thin bag wash or schmear instead of a thick stucco or a paint. In our proposal, we list a lot of those reasons. You know, we recently, before this project started, the owner did all this remedial work, and there was an existing thick stucco finish on it. It was a cementitious stucco, and it retained a lot of water and caused a lot of freeze thaw damage in the building, which is a huge reason why it is in the condition it is today. So we went with a type N thin schmear. Type O and type N are two different high lime content mortars. The type O, unfortunately, only comes custom made, so we are worried about that creating splotches and stuff. I believe Gary might have mentioned that at our initial meeting, the splotchiness of the coloring and the material in general. So we chose to go with this pre-mixed, pre-colored mortar. Yeah, so another reason we went down pretty much the guidelines straight from the book on landmark preservation. So if you go to like 2.1, preserve old building materials, 2.2, use gentle methods when refinishing, 2.3, repair original building materials when needed, 2.4, replace original building materials in kind, 2.5, remove later coverings that have not achieved historical significance. I think that's a huge part of this project. And then 2.6, maintaining original protective layers on masonry. That is part of what this product is helping us restore, is that an initial protective layering. And then 2.7, repoint the deteriorated masonry mortar. So we pretty much went down the list and hit all those. So we chose not to do the stucco because we were worried about the existing water content in that brick, any existing issues that could add water in there and then cause this structure to, behind the stucco, even deteriorate further and faster than it needs to. The thin mortar will allow that moisture to dry to the outside. The inside is coated with plaster, which also prevents drying to the inside somewhat. So that is one reason we went with this type N mortar. The type N mortar is also slightly softer than type S and other more standard mortars, which is more compatible with historic masonry and mortar materials. And then another question was, why didn't we choose to paint it? I think that's kind of obvious. If you look at the brick finish, it's not really together. It's very difficult to paint, and we think it would be negative for the impact of the building. This red mortar wash, we feel really closely maintains the existing character of the building. It helps protect and add that finish layer on top of the brick that's balled off. And it doesn't cause water retention that certain paints and a thicker mortar material would do. There's also questions about history. We included a few photos of this being used successfully on other historic projects, though they are not in Denver. And also a bibliography of sources that show that this material is an acceptable material to use on these types of structures. So yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for that?
I do. Are there like special precautions that have to be taken to prevent it? Because I'm thinking the weather, the hot temperatures, the amount of lime that's in the mix. Do you intend to wait until the weather's warm? Compatible with
Well,
the material?
yeah, they need to install it per the manufacturer's specifications, which should include the preparation of the surface and the temperature range in which it's compatible to install. I believe that also includes, we obviously can't test the moisture content of the brick. That's just going to change constantly. So that's kind of the one variable I can't really control on
I'm
that.
thinking more of the application of material itself drying out. And
Sure.
not being allowed to both hydrate and for the line to set up properly. Highline mortars frequently require moist curing processes.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, and that's more for repointing.
Yep. Yeah, and that's right. And some of these examples, they do have they'll either put a burlap sack or something over it to help slow down that process if it's a really hot day or a low humidity day.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we can open it up for public comment if there's anyone here in person or online who would like to comment on this project. No. Okay. Staff, Jesse, do you have any summary? Okay. Then I think we can move into deliberation. What do you all think?
I think first, thank you for all the helpful information. I know last time we were asking questions and I think this answered a lot of the questions we talked about. So I'm curious to hear what others think, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Yeah, I was not in the meeting when we first saw this project, but I definitely appreciated the very thorough kind of explanation of why this seems to be the best approach and kind of tracks with my understanding of best practices for preservation, particularly when you have a very deteriorated brick masonry like this. So thank you.
I'm supportive of staff's recommendation.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. Given the condition of the brick, there are not a lot of options to kind of figure out how to address both the preservation of the original material and maintain the architectural character. So preservation still, but I will support the staff's recommendation.
All right, would anyone like to make a motion, keeping in mind that the staff reports motion has a condition that we no longer need to include, given that the applicant materials have that information?
Madam Chair, I move to approve without condition, application number 2023-COA-211 for the alterations in one-story side addition at 2635 West 33rd Avenue, as per design guidelines 2.3, 2.14, 2.15, 3.19, 3.38, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 through 3.10. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and the information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Nick.
I'll second.
Thank you, Graham, for the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Great, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have project 2023-COA-269 for 1335 to 1345 Grant Street in the Civic Center Historic District. And again, we have Jesse presenting.
Okay. So this is a project that has come before you previously. I'm just going to go over briefly, different historic districts in this area, and kind of a little bit of the, context of what we're looking at. So Civic Center Historic District was designated as a local historic district in 1976. Denver Civic Center design guidelines identify the period of significance as 1909 to 1979. The historic district is composed of 22 buildings, 3 of which are individual landmarks and 14 are contributing features. It was also added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1988 and that district is made up of 18 buildings, 2 structures, and 12 objects. And then in 2013, Civic Center was designated as a National Historic Landmark. And the NHL is composed of 27 buildings and features, 18 of which are contributing to the district. In addition to the district boundaries, the proposed development area neighbors on 2 individual landmarks. I don't have those pictured here on this slide, but those include the Aramore apartment building and the Scottish Rite building, which we had discussed previously. And I would like to note that each one of these districts has very different boundaries from one another, and not all of them include the property that's being discussed today. However, staff would like to point out that the purview of the commission is tied to the locally designated historic district, but it's important to have that additional context, just so you understand how this area developed. Did you do it for me? Okay, thank you. So the Landmark Preservation Commission previously reviewed a submittal for phase 1 mass forming context on May 2nd, 2023 for a 12-story building that is shown on the left of the screen. The commission denied this application with the following comments. You stated that the application did not meet guidelines 4.23, including building widths, stating that 4 to 8 story buildings stand on their own in this district, and this proposal does not. The commission felt that the application created a street wall that was out of context. The commission also stated that a taller building could be constructed in this location, but the application needed to focus on the street wall and building space and massing issues. They also stated that the proposal blocks the sky from many different viewpoints, and that the design did not respond to the district. Stated that the design massing height needed to better fit within the context, and the commission recommended that the proposed building give space to the surrounding buildings in this district. Many of you stated that the 12 stories was overwhelming in this location and cited specifically guideline 4.4 and 4.1 and 2. You cited guidelines 4.4 for height and massing in the surrounding block context, and stated that of concerns over the impact on the individually landmarked church, and that the building could potentially overwhelm that individual landmark. You were supportive of the use of balconies on this residential structure, but recommended restudy of the balconies materials, potentially recommending the use of glass or a clear railing material. And then finally, the applicant has taken, staff did want to say, after they did listen to that deliberation, the applicant did listen to the commission's comments. And they took them into account and made revisions to their applications accordingly. The applicant is now proposing a 9-story building that's plus or minus 126 feet in height, as you can see on the right-hand side. And this will be a multifamily residential structure on a vacant lot at 1334 to 1345 Grant Street. And it's located within the locally designated Civic Center Historic District boundaries. Staff did want to point out that this is zoned for CMX 8 with the opportunity for additional height incentives for residential projects that comply with the DRMC section 27-224 C1B and for meeting all requirements of the affordability policy. So the first floor of the building will be used excuse me. The first floor of the building will be used as can you just go to the next slide, Brittany? Sorry, my slides got out of order. So the first floor of the building will be used as parking and building amenities with additional subterranean parking on P2 and P3. The parking will be accessed off the alley to the west, and the amenities, leasing office, fitness center, et cetera, will be accessed off Grant Street to the east. The building's base floors, or the building's base are floors 1 to 2, and will have a footprint of approximately 129 feet 9 inches by 112 feet, matching the previous footprint, with a reduction in height of 1 story from the previous submittal. The building's middle floors will be composed of floors 3 to 8, and will have a footprint of 119 inches, or not inches, 119 feet by 101 feet 6 inches, a reduction of 10 feet 1 inch by 10 feet 6 inches from the previous proposal, and a reduction in height by 1 story. And then the building's cap will be floors 9 and the rooftop, and will feature a footprint of approximately 104 feet by 85 feet 3 inches. And that's a reduction of 15 feet 9 inches by 16 feet 9 inches, and a reduction in height of 1 story. So the building's middle and cap will feature shifts in wall plane. The new building will be set back 10 feet. If you could go back to those the setback page. So the building will be set back 10 feet from Grant Street, a setback that's consistent with 1329 Grant Street. That's the Adams at Grant, and 23 East 14th Street, which is the individually designated First Baptist Church of Denver. The building will have a 10-foot side setback from the First Baptist Church of Denver, and the Adams at Grant will have at Grant buildings to the north and south, fitting in with the range of setbacks in the immediate area. And then finally, the new building will have a 1 foot 5 inch setback along the alley, and that fits within the range of setbacks in the immediate area. And if we could just go through those floor plans again for your review. So parking, ground floor, second floor, and then 3rd through 8th, and then 9th and the roof plan. So the building is designed in the neoclassical style. The proposed design draws from existing neoclassical and Art Deco buildings in the district, particularly the strong vertical detail similar to the State Services building, cornice, horizontal banding, and classical elements like those found on the Colorado State Museum, and a prominent entry bay similar to those found on the State Capitol Annex. The applicant has significantly revised their compatibility study so that it better illustrates where they're drawing their designs from and showing how they're trying to fit within that context. I have additional pages in the application packet that show this context study, but here are just a few of the images that show where they're drawing their design ideas from. Next slide. So the new construction will be approximately 114 feet in height to the 9th floor and will have a total of 9 stories. This is a reduction in height of 36 feet and 3 stories from the previous submittal. The applicant did include the height of the rooftop appurtenances, raising the total building height to 126. And they have clearly defined floors 1 to 2 as the base, 3 to 8 as the middle, and floors 9 and the cap, or floor 9 as the cap. So Civic Center's buildings are mostly 2 to 8 stories in height, with one exception. The Ralph L. Carr Colorado Judicial Center, which is a 4 to 12 story building, and it's 184 feet in height. Staff would like to note that this structure is located on a downhill slope from the state capitol. So it doesn't read from the state capitol as tall as it does, as it actually is. And this site is more comparable in grading to the capitol. So here you can see the previous submittal showing the height in comparison to other buildings surrounding the structure. And then on the bottom right-hand side, you can see the current proposal, which is significantly lower in height and better aligns with the street wall along Grant Street and does not exceed the height of the steeple on the Baptist church. So the East Grant Street side of the building facade features a glassy store front first floor with anchored corners, while the second floor has a band of punched openings. The building base is broken up into 3 bays, including a central recessed entry bay with projecting canopy flanked by pilasters and storefront bays. The base is clearly defined as and is capped by a cornice. Staff feels that the proportions, height, and layout of the east elevation base better relate to the immediate surrounding context and provides more of a pedestrian-friendly scale than previously submitted. The east elevation's middle features strong vertical detailing, punched window opens, regular window rhythms and layouts, and a clearly defined, thank you, Brittany, and a clearly defined cornice typical of other buildings in this district. The building's middle is set back from the base, approximately 11 feet 6 inches to 6 feet, providing visual relief from the building's base. The middle is broken into 3 bays with a central bay flanked by pilasters that align with the pilasters on the building's base. The center bay is set back 6 feet from the building base, and the side bays are set back 11 feet 6 inches from the building base. The east elevation features single, paired, and triple window configurations, all of which are found in the district, particularly on the residential structures of this district. The applicant has redesigned the window proportions so that they better relate to the other window openings found in the district as well. The building's cap is set back from the middle, approximately 8 feet 9 inches to 6 feet. The building's cap is broken into 3 bays with a taller central bay flanked by two side bays. The central bay is set back 8 feet 9 inches from the building's middle, and the side bays are set back 6 feet from the building's middle. The building's cap features a cornice that wraps the building, and staff were initially concerned about the center bay stepping up in height, but ultimately we made the determination that after reviewing those building perspectives, that the cap, it would have a minimal visual impact. It wouldn't be very readily visible for public vantage points because it's so high. And then the building's cap features single punch window openings and doors with proportions and rhythms that relate to the rest of the buildings in the surrounding context. And I'm just going to kind of group together the other three elevations to save a little time here. So the north, south, and west elevation base are composed of 2 stories, matching the east elevation. The northeast and southeast corners of the first floor feature a partial continuation of the storefront windows seen on the east elevation, while the northwest and southwest corners feature garage doors. The base features punch window openings, regular window rhythms, and layouts that align with the windows on the building's middle and a clearly defined cornice. The building's middle features strong vertical detailing, punched window openings, regular window rhythms, and layouts in a clearly defined cornice, typical of other buildings in the district. And the building's middle is broken into 3 bays on each of those sides, with the central bay flanked by 2 bays. And these elevations do not feature pilasters. Additionally, staff feel that the strong vertical lines, regular punched openings, and more subdued detailing on these other elevation easily relate to other buildings in the district, particularly the state capitol building or the state capitol annex building. And felt that it allowed the east elevation to really stand out as that primary elevation. The center bay is set back 5 feet from the building's base, and the side bays are set back 6 feet 11 from the building's base. The north, south, and west elevations feature regularly spaced window and doors and with balconies. The windows and doors have proportions commonly found in this district, and the applicant has added the transparent balconies per the commission's recommendation on May 2nd. And then the building's cap is broken into 3 bays. Again, that taller central bay on the east elevation flanked by the side bays has a consistent cap and a consistent inset of 7 feet 10 inches from the building's middle. And again, that cap features the cornice that wraps the entire building. Staff are supportive of the development of this site and its use as affordable housing. Staff feel that the applicant has worked diligently to make the design better, meet the guidelines, and fit within the district context, and have really truly taken into account the commission's previous deliberations. Next slide. Okay, and pictured here are just a few of the perspective drawings that were included in the packet. There are additional ones in there if you'd like to take a look, including a light study that might be helpful. So staff is recommending approval of the application, citing guidelines 4.1 to 4.5, 4.8, 4.22 to 4.28, 4.3, intent statements 4A, 4B, 4C, 4G, 4H, 4I, Denver Civic Center Design Guidelines 4C.1, 4C.2, and 4E.3, presented testimony and submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Jessica. Do you have any questions for staff? I did have just one.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm assuming that your recommendation for approving the application is for this phase 1.
Correct. Yes, they will have to bring back phase 2 design details at a later meeting.
Thank you. All right, I think we're ready to hear from the applicants. So again, together you have up to 10 minutes, and if you please each give your name and address to start. I have a presentation. Let me open that.
Thank you.
You'll have to let me know when you want. Images.
Absolutely. Hello again, Kate Arano, 7122 Swadley Court, Arvada, Colorado, 80004. Just wanted to really quickly say we're thrilled to be back here today with a new design for your review. We really do believe that this design will create a safe and inviting environment that encourages travel up the block to Civic Center. Ken Pizzarelli, owner of LAI Design, is here with me today to answer any questions that you may have and go over a couple slides with you. But before I leave Ken to it, I just want to express our sincere gratitude to Jesse and staff because they've really gone above and beyond to assist us to get us here today. So just thank you so much. It's really meant a lot to all of us. Ken?
Great. My name is Ken Pizzarelli with LAI Design Group. And I too was going to extend warm wishes and thanks to Jesse because frankly, without the above and beyond guidance and offline meetings and review of the application, we certainly wouldn't be before this group today. But in any event, that said, I'm going to cover site plan, some of the items that Jesse did, but I'll highlight design guidelines, context, and how it addresses impacts and things like that. So next slide, please. So it's always fun for me to kind of start at the beginning. What does the blank slate look like? And here's the parking lot, clearly a underutilized piece of real estate in a very important neighborhood in the community. Next slide, please. And so on the site plan, you'll notice the building articulation, 10-foot to 16-foot side yard setbacks, depending on where you're looking at, either at the building openings, it increases on the sides, and then obviously 10-foot, as Jesse mentioned, off of Grant Street in the front. And so we have this wonderful opportunity for a great streetscape in front of what will be a very nice building. And then off the back, you'll see the area in yellow. That is additional alley dedication that will occur once hopefully approved here today. And we can move towards a zone lot amendment and make that additional right-of-way dedication. Next slide, please. So these are some of the contributing buildings that were pointed out earlier that we took cues from. And, you know, some of what I always just personally as a designer really like to see are prominent and definitive entries. And, you know, these particular buildings in and around the Capitol complex all have definitive entries, some with recessed, which is what we have on ours with a protruding awning, but you can see kind of the dominance there of how they really anchor the buildings as well as relate to the pedestrian realm. The other things that, you know, we've picked up on that were discussed earlier are clearly the decided base, middle, and cap. And in our case, our cornices are not ornate. They're very simple, understated elegance, and that's in keeping with that neoclassical style. Next slide, please. So these were some of the non-contributing, but they still provide design context with the vertical elements, the pilasters, the window mullions, openings, again, things that we just covered previously. So as we go to the next slide, you'll kind of see how we overlaid those on top of the elevations. I think everybody in this room reads plans for a living. I've been doing it a long time. I still like 3D, but for the purposes of this slide, it's really helpful to kind of see how those vertical elements work respective to those pilasters, punch windows, the horizontal banding with the cornices, our base with the facing Grant Street with the recessed entrance and the protruded awning, and then the activated street frontage along our building wall oriented toward Grant. The thing that you can't see on this slide is the shift in vertical plane. So when we get into some of the 3D renderings, you'll start to see how my grandma would describe the building as wedding caked, or architecturally speaking, the bulk plane is adjusted to allow more natural lighting into the street, the alley, and neighboring properties. Next slide, please. And so there you can begin to see that context of how the first floor is right up at the build to, almost to the build to line, but it's in keeping with adjacent properties, creating that defined building wall. And then the middle, which is 3rd to 8th floor, steps back, but you'll notice that the 3 bays that were discussed repeatedly through Jesse's presentation, you'll see how that middle and cap protrude, as does the entry. So it really kind of plays to the simplicity and scale and proportion of the building context. Next slide, please. And so here you can kind of see how that building wall works with the streetscape. And we, for the purposes of this presentation, took out any street trees that would ultimately be in there from a landscape architecture perspective, but we'll get to that, because the main things that we wanted everyone to see is how that recessed entrance is prominent with the pilasters flanking it, and then the store frontage on either side, again, along with that the canopy that extends. And then with the scale of human beings walking along there, you can see how that 2-story base really does work much better. And it's always disappointing when somebody doesn't like what you had, but frankly, your commentary from our last presentation to today, we took to heart. And I think in the end, it's a better project. Next slide, please. So then here's a bird's eye view again, showing our rooftop and amenities up top there, how the cap is recessed, middle is recessed, and then the ground plane, how that's treated along the base of the building. Next slide. And then just kind of looking through the neighborhood and how it feels better, is not overwhelming. And I think works a lot better with the neighborhood. Last slide, please. So thank you for everyone's support, and hopefully you'll look favorably upon our proposal here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you give us your address? I don't think.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's Ken Puncarelli with LAI Design Group, and our office is at 88 Inverness Circle East, Suite 101, Inglewood, Colorado, 80112.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can now welcome any public comments on this project. If you would like to make a comment, you can either raise your hand on the Zoom function or dial *9 on your phone. For any person. Okay, looks like we don't have any public comments. Any summary from staff or recap?
Just a quick follow-up on the CLAM. If they do have to split the lot, that will have to come before you all for review. But we can likely do that as a consent agenda item the same time that these.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're ready to move into deliberation. I'd like to start.
I didn't have the benefit of seeing the first version, but the second version, I think does a nice job of fitting the neighborhood. It is a unique district, and the style of building and the height, kind of that mid height adjacent to downtown. So I think appreciate all the context study and Jesse's report and presentation and the applicants. I feel comfortable with staff's recommendation.
I would also like to add that I thought it was a very clear package presentation, which I really appreciated. All the effort and detail went into that. And Also, the amount of detail and attention going into an affordable housing project is greatly appreciated. And I think will complement this district very well. So I'm in support of staff's recommendation for approval of this for mass apartment context. Excuse me.
Sure. Generally, I'm in support of staff's recommendation as well. I do want to commend the applicant for taking all of the input to heart from the last meeting. The changes are subtle but important. The setbacks above the base of the middle and the setback of the cap, I think, contribute greatly to it adhering to the guidelines and standards for the district. So good job there. My preference would have been to have the balconies recessed, but I understand setting back the walls that impacts the unit plans too greatly. So as a compromise, then being clear, it seems to work. In my view, as I said, I support standard.
Of course, we're not, we don't know the materials yet of the balconies. We'll be looking at that in phase 2, but.
I think it was noted. Sorry.
Well, no, yeah, but. Gary, any comments?
Well, I still have strong reservations that the plan does not really address guideline 4.23A as well as it could. I agree that this is a substantial improvement from the past application, but it is still a massive building on a street with buildings that are much smaller scale. So it's very important that the massing is addressed in a way that respects the other buildings. It is a residential building. It's not an institutional building, and many of the examples that were given are institutional buildings, which have a different kind of architectural expression. So I remain to be convinced that it satisfies guideline 4.23 regarding the facade that reflects the established range of historic building with seen in the surrounding historic context. And I think the reason this is so kind of important to me is the building across the street, which is not in the district and it's a contemporary building, does a much better job of breaking up the massing on the street front in a way that respects the range of smaller buildings on the street. It's the building across the street is a massive apartment building, and I just think it really respects the street in a much better way than this building does. So unfortunately, we just have a quorum today. So maybe it's the job of the other 4 of you to convince me that I'm wrong about this. And I think it has to do with how strong a contrast this building is from the other buildings on the street in the district.
Well, so I'll take a gander.
Okay.
We'll see how well I do. So I did not see the first iteration of this project either. But I will say, so the immediate context of the 2 historic apartment buildings that are to the south of the site, I think, clearly much smaller. But I think the rest of the historic district, which this is where it gets funky because there are so many different boundaries. And I know what we're really tasked with looking at is the city's historic district boundary. But I think of the Argonaut building, the brick apartment building on Colfax. I think it's just, I don't know why, but it's not included in the district, but it's right there at the corner across from the Capitol. It is, I couldn't tell you how many stories it is, but it's much taller than the ones that are immediately south of this project site. So I think of that building and other immediate historic apartment buildings that are quite a bit larger than the ones we see immediately south. And so in that way, I think it does blend in better with the historic context than maybe it would just by looking straight at Grant Street from the west or the east, excuse me. So I am also in support of this application. Again, I didn't see all the changes that were made, but my understanding of the setback and the reduction in size of the base, I think helps a lot with the scale immediately on the street. So that's my,
Well, because I've looked at some of the larger apartment buildings in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
The Argonaut is one, and it has two wings with an open center.
right, it's a different,
It's a
right,
different configuration, and so it breaks up the facade above the. Can't remember if the base of that building is 1 or 2 stories, but it kind of breaks up the facade above the second story, which I think is a kind of massing that is more in compliance with what guideline 4.23 might be talking about. There's another building in whose name I kind of forget. It's on the corner of 16th and Logan. It's the Norman or something like that. Has a similar kind of configuration.
yes, yeah,
Again, where there is the mass of the building above the second floor is not a big block. It's not only setback, but there's a differentiation on the sizes of the modules of the building as it faces the street, which is more of a traditional apartment massing form from that period. If this building paid more respect to that, I think it'd be easier for me to say, yes, it's compatible. The building across the street, which is not in the district, it's a contemporary building, also addresses massing in a way that is more compatible with the overall context. And I think that's where my trouble is that this building is a departure from the massing on both sides of the street, even though only one side of the street is in the district. Right, Brittany, what were you gonna say?
So I was gonna say that the Civic Center Historic District doesn't have a lot of residential structures. It is mostly its institutional monumental buildings. And that is the context we do ask the applicants to look at. Again, this one is a little bit complicated because it does have individual landmarks around it that are designated buildings. But I would say our general advice is to look at the context within the district, and perhaps Jesse can speak on that.
Yes, and I would just further elaborate on staff from these different iterations of the design. There was a conversation, we were talking about the setback on which you see on a lot of residential structures. But we felt that they were providing that great massing by shifting the side wings back, and it would relate both to those institutional structures as well as the residential structures, and breaking up the massing of that base street wall front the way that we had. It ties into a lot of the portions that you find on almost all of the buildings in the space of the district, and it breaks up that massing of street wall so that it is more pedestrian friendly. And helps to scale the building to even though it's much taller than the surrounding buildings, helps to better scale it to the immediate context as well as the overall context for this district.
I would add, building on what Brittany said, that the district is primarily made up of institutional buildings. If you look at the scale and massing of those, they're even more monolithic than what the applicant is proposing here on this site. And so in that context, I find it hard to look at the existing buildings and tell the applicant that they can't achieve the same mass if it's articulated slightly better at the corners, which this application does. So they have the ability to build it by right. It's kind of a comfortable position for me to tell them that they can.
I think you raise a good point too, in that, you know, this is a project for affordable housing that I think we're all in support of, but of course, that isn't our purview, the use of this building. But by the same token, neither is it, whether it's residential or office or institutional. So I think that kind of builds onto what you're saying as far as that this blends into the institutional context that we see with these other buildings. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I think that the institutional, you know, the other ones kind of fly under the radar in the district a little bit, which is to say the streetscape is, you know, very much defined by the combination, but we haven't ever had a project trying to fit residential into a civic or institutional type of building that I remember seeing. So it is unique that way, but
It does mean that the next phase is going to have to be very, you know, the detailing is going to have to be, it's going to have to, that's how the connection to the street is going to be expressed, and it's going to be very important. That's done very carefully and very successfully. I'll go along with the majority, but it's a very reluctant, an extremely reluctant eye, because I really have reservations that this building still doesn't meet a guideline 4.23A as well as it should, given this particular block and its importance. I'll go along with the majority.
Thank you, Gary, for your thoughts. Would anyone like to make a motion? Unless there's any other. Yes, Jess.
Since Gary brought up sign details, it might be helpful to speak. It might be helpful to speak broadly so that the applicant starts.
Any thoughts to share?
I don't, well, you know, without getting specific, I can't, I mean, I think it's gonna have to do with materiality. I think a greater sort of reference to kind of a traditional approach to how the first two stories are detailed, as opposed to a very modern approach, and I know that's very vague. So that's gonna have to do with materials. I also have some concerns that the fenestration pattern is not going to work for some of their, like the windows are too close together on some of the facades for a one-bedroom unit. So the fenestration pattern, especially on the west, doesn't look like it's going to be very conducive to kind of dividing up that space to put both a living area and a bedroom on an outside wall, which would be a code requirement. So I think there's some design issues that have to be looked at very carefully to make this building work. Right now, we're just talking about mass form and context, and it's really pushing the limits in terms of context from my perspective. And so it's all going to be about materiality. If it's a stucco box, you know, that's going to be a really tough sell from my perspective.
I think that's a fair point, that in a context of really high quality buildings that have, you know, each an architectural pedigree of their own and it's very high end materials, and, you know, if we're going to use that form as a context, then the materiality following that seems like a logical thing, which is a commitment. That's a design choice, you know, even using that as a justification of the form. So I agree with you on that, Gary. And I think that's an important piece of it for sure.
Right. Anyone would like to make a motion? Sure, I'll go.
Nick's looking at me.
I just don't want to step on it.
I recommend for the motion that you state phase one mass form and context, as it's a two-step approval and not
Okay.
just the new construction.
All right, I move to approve application number 2023-COA 269. Phase one mass form and context for the new construction at 1335 through 1345 Grant Street. As per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.5, 4.8, 4.22 through 4.28, 4.31. Intent statements 4A, 4B, 4C, 4G, 4H, 4I. Denver's Civic Center Design Guidelines 4C1 and 4C2 and 4E3 presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Erin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nick. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, the motion carries and we'll see you at phase two.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, moving on. Our next project is number 2023-COA 261 at 722 High Street in the East 7th Avenue District. Crystal is the staff person, but Jesse will be covering that for us today.
Back at it again, guys. All right, this is a property at 722 North High Street. Yes, I can. That's a good point. I cannot.
Sorry. Something the request is started.
Okay, I just got it. It should be on.
And I've given you control as we know.
Let me see. May take a second. Okay. Now we're situated. So this is the property at 722 North High Street. It's located within the East 7th Avenue Historic District. The building was built in 1916 and is a brick 2.5-story structure on a wide lot across from the Cheeseman Park or Little Cheeseman Park. And here are photos of the structure on the left. On the right, you can see the new proposed site plan for a large rear addition, which includes an attached garage and site work and a new patio and pool area. Here you can see, excuse me, the proposed floor plans. The applicant is proposing to add a 2-story rear addition for bathroom. Sorry, I'm reading someone else's notes and I'm having a little bit of trouble. So they're proposing to add a 2-story rear addition attached to a large 1-story addition and it will also include an attached garage. Additional changes to the site include adding a 6-foot rear yard wall, new walkways and patios, and a new pool area, as well as window wells. Here you can see the proposed location of demolition, which will be entirely at the back of the structure and will demolish a 1-story bump out and the existing detached garage. Staff originally had concerns about adding an attached garage, but the applicant provided several examples in their application showing attached garages throughout the district, which put those concerns to bed. And here you can see the addition from the front facade and the side elevation. The applicant is proposing to clad the new addition in large white limestone material that is not common to the district and will starkly contrast with the dark red brick on the contributing primary structure. Staff did have quite a bit of conversation around this material and felt it was not appropriate. One, because this material, while traditional, is not typically found on residential structures, and especially not on residential structures in this district. And we also felt that the scale of the material was not appropriate and would not blend in with the existing context. Staff would also like to point out that the red roof tile is proposed to match the primary structure, and the applicant believes that this is a modern contemporary style that fits within the existing historic context by tying in the use of that tile roof. But as you've just heard, staff did have concerns about that limestone material. Here you can see the rear elevation and the other side elevation. The new addition has a minimal number of window openings and it adds only casement windows to match existing proportions. Other openings for skylights or accordion doors to the new patio and pool area. And finally, here are isometric views of the proposed addition and wall, showing the overall look. Since the addition is largely at the rear of the primary structure and towards the back of the lot, staff had mixed reactions to the material, as it may not be highly visible at public vantage points. However, that being said, staff didn't feel that this was a material that is traditional to this historic district. Since the new proposed rear yard wall is also proposed to be clad in this white limestone towards the front of the lot, staff also had concerns with the visibility of that material there and voiced concerns about its appropriateness and use, again, as this is not a traditional material found in this district. And then staff made the applicant aware that all manufacturer material specifications are needed and need to be added and added this as a condition to the application or to the staff brief. Overall, the addition and site work changes are subordinate to the primary structure, though the material proposed is not common to the district. Therefore, staff is recommending two conditions to better meet the design guidelines. And that is that they provide manufacturer specifications for all new materials. Windows, should it be wood or aluminum clad wood, and have a minimum inset of 2 inches. And the second condition is that a more traditional material be selected for the proposed wall and addition cladding.
So just to clarify, the site, excuse me, the staff report, the second condition is not just for the rear yard wall, but the
Should be
addition
for the
material.
addition material, yes. Because they're both the same limestone material.
Right. Okay. Any other questions for staff? All right, we are ready to hear from the applicants. Online. Okay, welcome. Again, you have up to 10 minutes to for your presentation. And if you please give your name and address to start.
Hello, board. My name is Nick Young, and my address is 2060 Hoyt Street in Lakewood, Colorado. I think, even though you were reading notes, I think you did a pretty good job presenting the scale. I'll piggyback off that a little bit, just so everyone can understand the context. I want to reiterate, the existing home is a 3-story home, and we did propose a 2-story addition. What is up on the screen I think what represents it best is probably in the top right corner, the axonometric that shows the second story addition for about that 7-8 feet there. It's about a 200 square foot addition off the second floor. And then the 1-story addition below, really what kind of influenced the footprint of this addition was the existing facade width as well as the existing front porch width. So we were really trying to stay along those parameters with that 1 story. And we also, that 1 story where we have some challenges. So our finished floor elevation is quite a bit higher compared to the street elevation, about 5 to almost 6 feet higher than, let's say, the sidewalk there. The lot also slopes considerably from the northeast corner to the southwest corner. So I think that'll be relative to our conversations here soon in regards to perspectives of the general public from the primary street. That being said, we did want to keep that first level addition at the same datum of the finished floor just to minimize interior elevation changes and stairs. So that's why you will see some exterior stairs and in the landscape design along with the pool. What's not represented in these drawings is we have done some further design with the landscape architects in regards to this. On the macro, the landscape development has stayed the same. However, once we've got foliage and details in there, we feel as if the material and scale of the addition only got better. And I'll speak to that a little bit and why we chose what we did for the exterior material. The 2 main staff concerns were the exterior material as well as the wall placement, which I don't believe was mentioned. In particular, the west wall, privacy wall, let's call it. As of right now, staffs did have raised concern in reference to its location. As of now, I think if we can go to the site plan, that might convey it better, I think, which is 1 page up. That please, yes. There on the west, you will see the wall, and we aligned it just beyond to the east in line with the front facade, which is pretty typical. I believe there was some staff concern about some more recent zoning interpretations of a wall / 6 foot tall fence needing to be in line with a primary street facing facade, of which the bay window came into account. I would, in our interpretation, that bay window in reference to its west angled, which you can kind of see there at the bottom of the existing footprint of the building, is actually not technically considered a primary street facade, as if you take out parallel lines, it does not intersect. So in regards to our wall location, we feel as if it's appropriate. It'll give the homeowners a bit more functional yard space, as well as I believe it's meeting current zoning standards. If we could go to the exterior axons. The existing brick it's a much darker brick than we might see in some of these SketchUp images, which is the 3D modeling program in this left image, for instance. Some of that color changes a little bit. We have done with the landscape architect some really nice renderings, as I mentioned. And so I do want to make it clear, I think before the limestone was identified as being white, that's not quite the case. It's actually, we're leaning more towards a very neutral color, so not really a stark white at all. It's more of a play off the existing sills and capstones found throughout the existing home. And that's why we kind of lean towards this limestone in the first place. We feel as if so we were really trying to find that balance between hitting standards relative to 3.4 and the design standards compared to 3.5. For 3.4, it seems as if you guys don't like to see necessarily contrasting materials. And so I think to make this successful, if we can choose a limestone that has a very nice neutral tone, and then perhaps similar grout color, because I think this 2D drawing, for instance, can be somewhat deceiving because those grout lines really pop in this 2D black and white drawing. In reality, if we can choose a very similar grout color, I think this will kind of wash out a bit more, similar to almost a stucco finish and seen as a holistic material, but be much more detail oriented in regards and finish, whether it be that texture of the limestone and the dimensions of the limestone compared to if we explored, let's say, a stucco finish. We did look into some other materials such as brick, different colors of brick, but we felt as if the limestone was a nice, elegant material if we can find that right limestone, of which we have a couple selections right now, but one of which we've narrowed down to, which we really enjoy. In regards to that same material being applied to a wall finish, I think we've gone in back and forth. And again, sorry, these were really 3D studies post submittal of this application. I think we would really love staff's opinion on a brick 6 foot tall with a cap similar to match the existing home. Rather, I think I think the amount of limestone is a lot, and given staff's concern, we're hoping that might be a good balance of perhaps providing a brick wall in lieu of the limestone cladded wall, and therefore really nailing the details of the limestone with the 1-story addition off the rear that you see mainly from that primary street. And then lastly, I think the main perspective of this addition, and sorry, I meant 2-story addition, is at that southwest corner, which is about 5.5 feet lower than the finished floor elevation of the proposed addition, of which we'll have a 6-foot tall solid wall in front of as well. I believe that's it for my end.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. The limestone that you want to use, you've indicated it's 12 inches tall and 24 inches long. How thick is it? Is this a standard, like a 4-inch veneer, or is it more like an applied tile?
It's going to be an applied, we're looking at different thicknesses. There's a company that provides a custom product that we're looking into. What we're starting with first is really that application. But to answer your question more bluntly, 3/4 inch is what we're looking at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to public comments if there are any for this project, either in person or online. It looks like we have one. Megan, I believe we have Megan Zeiger here. When you are ready to speak, if you would please begin with your name and address, and you have up to 2 minutes.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. So thank you. My name is Megan Zeiger. We are the owners of this property, currently residing at 1257 Fillmore Street.
Hold on one second.
I'm sorry. Just a
So,
moment.
you as the property owners get to speak during the applicant presentation.
Gotcha.
Is still additional time. It's actually more than 2 minutes. So I'm going to pop up that timer. So you have 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay, well, hopefully I won't need that long, but so my husband and I are the owners of the property. And I think first and foremost, just want to say thank you for what you guys do. This is going to be our 3rd home in Denver that we will live in, all of which have been over 100 years old. We love and appreciate Denver's old neighborhoods and old homes. And we love living in Denver, largely because of the great livability of these fantastic old neighborhoods. And this is a home that we are very excited to make our forever home. We have 3 boys, and our intention is to raise those 3 boys in this home. And we're very excited and excited to invest and make this an amazing family home. So specific to the project, it sounds like a fair amount of the discussion is going to be on the limestone. And I just wanted to kind of reiterate a fair amount of what Nick said. And as we were, as a team going through trying to figure out what we wanted this addition to look like. And we went through kind of the different options. And, you know, a modern option didn't really feel, an uber modern option didn't feel right for us. As I've mentioned, we really love old homes, and it just sort of didn't feel like it fit. And as we thought about, you know, a sort of more similar red brick option, I know that the desire is to have some differentiation there. And also it felt, you know, just sort of a heavier, whereas the limestone kind of adds some lightness to, in my opinion, to the structure. And as well as the limestone being just a very classic, elegant, classy material that noted wasn't probably as used as often in residential buildings, but in buildings of the time was a very common material. And then also to Nick's point as well, it really meshes well with a lot of the accents on the existing home, specifically the sills. The limestone I think that we've picked out is almost an exact match to kind of that bone color sill, existing sill and caps and headers that exist on the home. And I used up my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Does that look like it? Okay, any recap from staff? Yes.
Just a couple of things. So I did want to bring up, this wasn't included in the staff brief, but staff did discuss that the wall at the front of the property should be set back behind the front wall of the house and not aligned with the porch, or hit midway through the porch. So that was one conversation that staff had, or recommendation that staff had. It sounds like during the applicant presentation that there are some questions about the specific material that they would be using. Staff has concerns about the proposed thickness of that material, as we typically do not allow thin brick or thin tile material to be used, as it's not a durable or high quality material typically. So we would need additional information on that. In light of that information and the lack of clarity as to what specific materials will be used on this application, staff feels that this is no longer a complete application.
I wanted to clarify too, a little bit more on the wall. So the landmark team now includes Bridget Torrijo, who came from residential, and she pointed out that the wall location may need to be set all the way back behind the bay due to the interpretation of the zoning code. So that's where some of those comments coming from in terms of the placement with the bay that the applicant mentioned. That is obviously not mine and Jesse's area of expertise, and we're the ones here today, but we do have some concerns over the placement of the site wall meeting the zoning code.
So given that you're saying now that you believe this is an incomplete application, are you recommending denial at this time?
Denial or continuance.
Okay. Thank you. Right, commissioners, would like to start?
We need public comment first.
We already,
Or did we?
we did.
Okay.
comment.
Sorry.
We went through that, yes.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern, other than the ones that are mentioned about some zoning issues and the placement of site walls, is the material. Because of its size and there's no precedent for the use of a large stone panel in a residential process or setting. I'd agree with the staff's recommendation to reconsider the facing material for both the addition and any sidewalls. That said, I also have sort of technical concerns about how well a 3/4 inch thick veneer, applied veneer, will last over a long time because it's not waterproof. No masonry material is waterproof, and just how it will perform. But that's sort of a comment for consideration on the part of the designer and the homeowner to, when they're reconsidering materials, to think about longevity.
Thank you, Gary. What else?
You know, I'll agree. I think to focus on the subordinates and others that the massing of the addition seems to make sense in the garage that Jesse mentioned in that context, but without repeating anything about the stone, I agree that it's probably not a residential application. That's a appropriate material. Talking about the fence, zoning requirements notwithstanding, that would be different from our purview. And landscape and vegetation, which were mentioned by the applicant. I do think that, primary facade is mentioned in the guidelines, but the idea of initiating a big site wall in the middle of a patio wall is something that we wouldn't have seen historically. And I think that whether that next column back or, a more kind of monumental part of the building seems to make sense as a spot for that wall. It, again, unless the zoning pushes it to a different place. So that was my only thought.
Yeah, I'll just say I agree, Graham, about the placement of the wall. That I think it at least needs to move to the most rear column of that wrapped porch, if not further back. Aaron, did you have? No, I was just agreeing with that from a site plan perspective. The other concern I had a little bit is looking at the elevations and the window and door openings. It appears they're just punched in. I don't have the architectural terminology, but there's no framing or sills. And that seems not to follow in context with the house design overall. Not that it has to be duplicative, but some articulation of the openings and fenestrations seems warranted here, or to understand if I'm reading that correctly, or if there's an intent to have sills or frames on the new windows would be nice. It seems like I would agree that this isn't a fully complete application, that there's some open-endedness that even the applicant mentioned of, oh, they're still looking at brick versus stone for the wall. And I think it'd be nice to know all of that ahead of time before we would approve anything.
Yeah, I would just say in general, I agree with most of what has been said. Yeah, the one concern that I have in addition is I know that a rear addition to a house should be differentiated material and perhaps mass. But this second story addition of the back, where the wall veneer is flush with the existing wall, and it was proposed to be brick to limestone. This is one case, I think, where, I mean, to me, it looks very odd. Yeah, and I think there are more elegant ways to do that. And perhaps in this one instance, if you're not going to make, if the applicant isn't going to make a setback of the mass at their rear addition, and therefore a setback and offset in the roof, to account for that, to differentiate between the old and the new materials, I might be able to support just matching that brick as closely as possible, so that it does look like, part of the original structure, and then nestle the single story beneath it, and so that it all makes better sense to the neighborhood materially, I think. I welcome other commissioners' comments on that.
We do often see an offset, right? Is it 4 or 6 inches, I think is the guideline.
It says 4 inches. Me personally, I've always interpreted it as an and/or situation in the guidelines, because it's not the overarching guideline, it's A, I believe. But it also says materials, change in wall plane. So I think like having the conversation about the offset is helpful, but I think there are other ways to differentiate it, but that's my personal opinion.
So that's right. So looking at 3.4, just wanting to tie a little bit back our conversation back to the design guidelines specifically.
about either differentiating with an offset or with changing material. But I think I think it's a good point though, Nick, of that goes back to, I think it's 3.6, the starkly contrasting materials is another consideration that in this case, especially because it's not offset, just reads wrong.
Yeah.
Well, there's a kind of an unspoken architectural rule, like one of the 101 things you learn in architecture school. Never terminate two materials in the same plane.
Right.
And so, if the cladding was going to be brick, for that two-story section, it could meet in the same plane. But if it's going to be a different material, like whether it's stucco or limestone or whatever, to try to figure out how those two materials meet in the same plane it's not a guideline per se, but it's certainly a practical consideration because the detailing of that gets really, really tricky. And can make an otherwise well thought out addition look kind of clunky and odd.
Yeah, one other thing I would say in response to what Aaron said about the additions, punched windows. I kind of like them in contrast to, I mean, it differentiates the new from the old, so, but that's just a matter of opinion, I think, for me.
I don't have a problem with that. I was just trying to understand if I was reading it correctly or if there was a detail missing.
Well, it appears that there hasn't, Ann's not here. But it appears that some of the windows that don't pay attention to even the coursing of the limestone panels, and then we would still expect the windows to be recessed correctly.
Yes,
And to do that with a 3/4 inch
yes.
veneer would be really
Yes.
difficult to detail without having some treatment.
Yeah, so
both.
it's not that I'm opposed to a punched window, it's understanding the detailing of it, which I can't read in.
Yeah,
I see.
I don't think it's been, at least the drawings, the submittal does not reveal how that's been thought about.
So I have a recommendation. It sounds like you're leaning towards a continuance or denial. I would say probably denial if you're not comfortable with the limestone material, because that gives clear direction to the applicant that that material is not something the commission is comfortable with. However, if you are, that would be more of a continuance. And the earliest we as staff could return this, if you do decide to continue it, would be the September 5th meeting.
Thank you, Brittany. I'll just say that I sounds to me from our conversation that a denial would be the most correct way to move forward, given our concerns with what has been presented to us, in addition to needing further information. Would anyone like to make a motion? Graham?
Madam Chair, sure. I can move to deny application 2023-COA-260 for the addition and site work at 722 North High Street as per design guidelines 3.1 through 3.10, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Gary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, the motion carries, and you can work with staff to revise your application and see it again, hopefully. All right, next we will move on to application 2023-COA-270 at 3021 California Street in Curtis Park. And Brittany is our staff person.
So our next application is for the phase 2 design details for a new single family residence in the Curtis Park Historic District. It will be located on this lot that is currently a non-historic garage. The commission has approved the zone lot amendment and garage demolition for this site. And the commission approved the phase 1 mass forming context on June 6, 2023. This new infill construction will be between two houses that are essentially sister houses, which are gable front houses. They're slightly unique to the Curtis Park Historic District because they have more classical detailing than some of the Queen Anne's that you typically see within Curtis Park. So here is the proposed site plan for this project. This is a single family residence, and there will be a detached garage in the rear. There will be a new 4-foot wide concrete sidewalk to the front porch, which is offset, but the walkway is pretty much right in the middle of the lot. The front entrance door is located in the middle of the facade, and then there will be a new walkway to the garage as well. AC units located in what is called the south side. So in downtown, where everything follows the Platte River, you just call it downtown north or downtown south. So this will be located on the south side of the project site. And then there will be a new 6-foot wood privacy fence around the property that is set back significantly from the front facade. So here's the location of the fencing on the south side. It wasn't entirely clear to me on the north side, to be honest with you. So I'm assuming it's set back, but perhaps the applicant can clarify a little more. And I didn't include that in my conditions, but probably needs additional clarification. So this single family home will have a basement, and there will be egress windows on the north side of the property. And then the first floor and second floor are the habitable spaces, and then just a 1-story garage. The roof form is a little bit complex here. It is a hip roof with a projecting side gable and side gable with a forward gable in it, and that is to mimic some of the roof forms that you see in the Curtis Park Historic District. Staff are supportive of this roof form, and the roof will be clad in asphalt shingles for both the primary structure and the garage. So here is the front facade and the south elevation. This property will be clad in a red brick. It's the ballpark brick that you see here on the screen. Within the gable face of the forward facing gable, the applicant initially proposed the fish scale shingles, which is in your packet today. Staff did make a condition that additional details be provided on the reveal of the shingle. Since that time, staff and the applicant have spoke, and the applicant is going to change the profile to the round shingle with a 5-inch reveal. Staff are supportive of this change. However, we're still recommending that as a condition on the approval today, as that is not before the commission today for review. Specifically, the shingle material is the true wood product that the commission has approved before. However, we typically require this product to be cut along the natural shingle edge, and that is noted in the application materials. So we did not include that as a condition. The front facade, again, will be clad in brick and will have a dogtooth detailed course separating the first floor and ground floor, and then a concrete foundation with that raised foundation that is typical of the Curtis Park Historic District. Here you also have the front door, which is a 2-panel door. Solid door, and then it's going to have a transom above. This is a custom stained glass transom. The applicant is doing something modern in terms of the transom detail that relates to the decorative stained and leaded glass that you see throughout the Curtis Park Historic District. On the secondary elevations, the brick will wrap the facade, and then it will transition into a 4-inch smooth finish fiber cement hardy siding. And the garage will be clad in that material as well. All windows will be inset into their respective cladding materials, as you can see in this section detail here. And all of the windows are proposed to be an aluminum clad wood window with a black exterior. The windows on the brick portion of the structure will have precast concrete headers and sills. You can see a detail of that color that is proposed on the screen as well. That will be in the natural finish. And then it's party trim around the windows on the lap clad portion of the building. And then here, very small, we do have a transition detail between those two materials. Sorry, on the south elevation during the last commission review, there was lots of discussion about this larger window in the stairwell. The commission did indicate that they felt that the window size and opening size was appropriate. However, the detailing the specific window in the opening needed to be further looked at. So the applicant has redesigned the windows that are within that opening, and they're going with a window that has two small square kind of transom designs with two larger openings below. And staff feel that this is pretty traditional of windows found in these larger stairwell windows. And then here on this elevation, you can also see an image of the proposed light fixture. There is a lighting plan in your packet, but I didn't see specifically where the front porch light would be, so I do need additional details on that. So here are the rear elevation and the north elevation. Not much has changed in terms of these elevations. Again, that brick will be wrapping the primary structure and then transitioning into a lap siding. On the rear, we do have a aluminum clad slider door, and then you can just see the proposed smooth finish fiber cement that is proposed for both the primary structure on the secondary facades and all of the elevations of the garage structure. Here are some renderings of the proposed infill project. We don't have color renderings of this specific project, but that's not something we necessarily require. So staff are recommending conditional approval. And my original condition was confirm the fish scale shingle be between 4 and 6 inches. I would still recommend that as a condition. Just change it from the fish scale to the round shingle that True Wood provides. And then just additional clarification on the light fixture locations on the front facade, as I did not see that called out in the elevations, but I did not include that in my original motion. That's it for me.
Thank you. Right. Are there any questions for staff, commissioners? Brittany, I thought you had also at the very beginning of your presentation noted something about this.
Yes, I'm sure the fence location is noted on the north side. It's just sometimes hard for me to read with the property lines. So additional clarification would be helpful.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're ready to hear from the applicants. Collectively, you have 10 minutes to present. And when you are ready, which I think we're moving you over now to talk, you can begin with your name and address. We have everyone.
Here we go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Sorry, I'm going to apologize right now. We just had a power outage. So I'm using the hotspot on my phone and I hope that it doesn't cut out during this.
Okay.
So,
So good.
okay. So I'll make it short just in case that it does. Most all that we wanted to go through was already said as far as the changes that we made during the last presentation. Adding the stained glass to the front, adjusting the windows at the stairwell along the side, clarifying that connection between the two different roof pitches on either side, the north and the south sides of the house. That was the majority, and then the shingles at the gable end on the front of the house. We are definitely going to a round shingle with a 5-inch reveal. I believe your other question about the light at the front of the house, if you look at in your packet, the lighting plan on the last sheet on the ground floor, it does show a wall sconce between the ground floor window and the front door. on the front porch. And so that's where it's going there, potentially about 6 feet up. If you can see that. And then it kind of cut out again because of my questionable connection about what your last remaining question was for clarification. I didn't get that. One change I wanted to mention that I don't believe you will have any issue with that we want to make, and we just wanted to mention it. It's very small, but on the back of the house, if you look at the site plan, we want to move where the AC units are to the north by 2 feet. So they're closer to that window well at the rear of the house and less visible from the front. And that's just simply so we can have a clear path down that south side property line. Since we have window wells along the north side, we wanted to make sure that south side was clear. Other than that, I think that covers what we needed to say. I think it was all pretty self-explanatory. Oh, the only other change that we made that was mentioned was the dogtooth band that we put in the brick around the front and the sides. I believe that's it.
Okay, thank you. Could you give your name and address? I don't think we caught that.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm Dawn Burnley with Design Edge Architects, and it's 482 South Broadway, Suite 100, and Denver 80209.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants? Okay, does it look like we do? So we can now open it for public comments. I will just mention that we did receive a letter of support of this application from the Curtis Park Historic Neighborhood Association. It looks like we have Keith joining us. Keith, if you would begin with your name and address, and you have up to 2 minutes.
Great, thanks. Keith Pryor with the Curtis Park Design Review Committee, 2418 Champa Street. Yes, the applicant's been very receptive to our comments and changing out the upper story shingles to be that which is more applicable to the district and gives that more traditional actual feel of the Queen Anne. This has been a great project, and we feel that the materials that they've chosen work well, and they have made those changes that we had requested, and we ask that the commission support this application as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, so staff, any recap that you'd like to make?
Yeah, the relocation of the AC unit, that's something we would normally do administratively, don't have major concerns over that. Again, just confirming that shingle will be that round shingle, as this current packet does have the fish scale noted and doesn't have the reveal, so that will still need to be a condition. And then the light fixture is noted in the lighting plan, but the specific location on the facade isn't, and that's something that we normally look at. So that's just additional clarification on its exact positioning. So just a few conditions just for clarity, but no major concerns.
Thank you. All right, can we move into deliberation? Commissioners, would anyone like to start?
I remember splitting the zone lot here and seeing that one. But I think what's evolved is a nice project that meets the guidelines and short of the clarifications. Support approving.
Okay. Anyone else? Nick?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the change in the window at the stair. I think that helps a great deal. It doesn't look like a slide glass door. So that's good. And then in general, I agree with staff and can support the project.
All right, so if someone would like to make a motion, keeping in mind the additional conditions that Brittany talked about as far as round scale, a round shingle, clarification on the front light fixture and location of the fence. I'd like to give it a try.
We're all looking at Aaron.
Okay, fine. For sure. All right, I move to conditionally approve application number 2023 COA 270 for phase 2 design details at 3021 California Street as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.3, 4.5 through 4.8, 4.16, 4.18 through 4.20, 5.5 through 5.6, 5.18. Character defining features for the Curtis Park Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, clarification of the round shingle and a 5-inch reveal. 2, location of the exterior light fixture on the front facade. And 3, clarify the fence location on the site plan.
Thank you, Aaron.
I'll second.
Thank you, Graham. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Great, the motion passes. All right, we are now at 3 o'clock, which is traditionally when we take a quick break. Or we could plow through because we have one last application. So yes, and we have, I believe, the applicants in person. So sounds like we're in agreement that we can just forge on ahead. So we'll move on to our last project. This is 2023 COA 271 at 119 West Park Avenue, also known as the Shorter AME Church or Cleo Parker Robinson Dance. And Brittany is our staff person.
So our next application is for an addition to an individual landmark structure at the kind of triangular intersection of Park Ave, Washington Street, and 20th Street. So here we have the current aerial image. The boundary to this individual landmark is very tight to the actual building. It does extend very minimally onto some pieces of the property, but maybe about like 5 feet. There is a non-historic addition on what again is downtown north of this structure at the rear that you can see in this aerial image here. So again, portions of that addition are touching the historic landmark, which is within our purview, but portions of that addition are outside of our purview. I did pull in this historic Sanborn map to show you the original configuration of the site. So historically, along Washington Street, there were residences and the open land to the north wasn't historically part of the site. And I pulled this image specifically as our guidelines talk about not changing open space patterns. Staff do not feel that the change to the open space patterns impacts the structure, as the open space that you see currently was not historically part of the site. So we are comfortable with the placement of the addition on the site and do feel that is an appropriate location as this church does have multiple visible elevations. It's really difficult to say like one facade has more importance over the other. However, it's the facade that is not on the street, and you could technically classify it as more of a secondary facade. And then the primary facade does face onto that kind of corner, which was historically Cheyenne Street. But that has been reconfigured. So here is the historic church. So this is historically the AME Shorter Methodist Church. It was named after their original, well, not their original pastor, but one of their pastors when they built the structure. It was founded by 2 women. This is not the church's original location, and this is not the original structure in this location. This specific structure was constructed in 1925 after the structure on this site was destroyed by a fire started by the Ku Klux Klan. This 1925 church was constructed between the months of April when the fire was started and finished and completed in December of that same year with several support and generous support from the community. So this church is designated for its architecture, geography, and cultural significance. It was one of the largest sanctuary structures at the time that it was constructed. The church has been the home of Cleo Parker Robinson Dance since 1987, but Cleo Parker Robinson Dance was founded in the 1970s. And Cleo Parker Robinson herself is a person that is noteworthy of, she is been inducted into the Colorado's Women Hall of Fame in 1989. She's on the National Council of the Arts appointed by President Bill Clinton in 1999. In 2000, received the Kennedy Center Medal of Honor during the center's Master of African American Choreography series. So this church and the current use is very significant to this site and the community. In this image, you can also see the existing non-historic addition located at the rear, and this is generally the facade that the addition will be added to, and the front elevation of the existing structure. So again, this is for an addition to the structure to allow Cleo Parker Robinson Dance, which is a Center for the Healing Arts now, to be located in and continue to use this space. The proposed addition is a glass lobby addition that is double height. And then the dance studio's new theater space will be on what you see the right here, but north side of the site, which is well outside of the landmark boundary. So our purview is limited to the connection between the addition and the existing historic structure and alterations being made to the existing historic structure. So here is the existing site plan and alterations proposed for the rear addition. Staff isn't entirely clear what those alterations are proposed. It does look like in elevations that this addition will be reskinned in some manner, likely not demolished, but again, it's not entirely clear what this the plan is for this existing rear addition. However, I don't think the interior connection will currently change. We would like some additional details on that, but again, it's a non-historic addition and not within the boundary. We're more concerned with the connection details. The new addition is proposed to provide ADA accessibility to the entirety of the historic church structure. So if you look at the overall floor plan of this church, as soon as you enter, there are a set of stairs, and the main kind of sanctuary space, theater space, is not ADA accessible. So this addition will provide ADA accessibility for the entirety of the historic church structure. So here is the proposed floor plan and roof plan. All of the floor plans are in your packet. In my presentation today, I've just pulled the first floor plan and roof plan just to look at the connection details. So the new lobby vestibule space will have an entrance. It is set back from the primary entrance, and staff do not feel that it takes away from the primary entrance of the church. It's rather quite understated. So we do feel that that's appropriate, as our guidelines do talk about retaining the original primary entrance. Again, principally a lobby space, and the connection between the historic church and new addition is going to be a minimal butt glazed joint that I do have details of on the next image in the slide. And then at the rear where the existing addition is, that is where the ADA accessibility will be added with new elevator, stair spaces as well. And then the other portion, which is outside of the commission purview, again, is new theater, classroom spaces. So in terms of the roof, again, this is a glass skylight connection. It is tucked just underneath the existing historic tile roof of the church, and I do have a detail of that as well. So we'll just move on to the elevations. So the main addition that is under purview today for the commission is a glass addition. It will have a entrance, I guess we'll call that Washington Street, kind of facing towards Washington Street. It is again understated in nature, which is recommended by our guidelines for additions. The addition is set back from the primary facade, which is recommended for institutional, civic, and commercial buildings. Staff do have some concerns over the placement of the addition. We did recommend that it be set back behind the Belfry Tower. We felt that that was a more logical location for the addition. However, this is not the original submittal for this addition. This is the original concept submittal that you see on the screen here. So the applicant has pushed the addition entrance back further than they initially were proposed, another 6 feet. And the applicant has stated that the interior lobby space is very important to their programmatic needs. And so they feel that the placement does work for what they need for their programmatic needs and also respecting the architectural character of the building. And the applicant did revise kind of the material cladding and articulation of the glass mullions between the concept submittal and the design before you today to allow for more views into the church and see that north elevation of the church, which there are no changes proposed to that north elevation. So the windows will stay intact. The addition again tucks right underneath the roof that you can see kind of in this rendering. And it is all glass to allow for views back into that elevation. However, once that elevation is enclosed, it will no longer be within the purview of the Landmark Preservation Commission. So here is the north elevation of the church, and you can see the connection detail of the addition to the historic structure. So this is the connection detail at the existing brick. So it's a butt glazed joint that will be anchored into the brick. And then at the roof, another skylight butt glazed joint that will be anchored into the roof. And then here, very lightly indicated, is the existing roof overhang. So again, it will just tuck neatly underneath the existing roof structure. Again, staff did recommend that the addition could be set back further to relate better to the architectural massing and scaling of the existing building. And again, staff's recommendation was behind the Belfry Tower and this second set of buttressing, but the applicant feels strongly that the proposed programming and the setback that they are presenting today is the best solution for their programmatic needs. So here are just some renderings of the addition. So staff generally are supportive of the addition and the use of this addition, as we feel that the ADA accessibility and continued use of this space by Cleo Parker Robinson Dance for the Healing Arts is very important, as it is a legacy built business within this space and has historical, I would say, significance at this point as for how long they've been an institution in the neighborhood. But we are recommending that the front facade of the addition be set back behind the Belfry Tower, massing or the second set of buttressing. And then we were asking for additional details proposed for the modification of the existing non-historic addition, just so we're clear on what will be changing there in terms of the connection details. So, thank you, Brittany. Gary, did you?
I'm a little confused. It appears to me that that addition in the back is going to be demolished. Is that your understanding as well?
I think that is a great question for the applicant.
If it is to be demolished, does it change the staff report in any particular way?
No, because it's a non-historic addition and it's really, we're just more concerned about the connection details there than anything, as that's what our purview is. So I feel comfortable if it's also demolished. It's just wanting to look at those connection details.
The condition does say for demolition.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Gary.
It was, but it slipped. You made a comment that once the addition is done, the facade that's enclosed is no longer under our purview.
That
Can
is
you
correct.
explain what that's about?
Yeah, so
It's no interior.
it'll become interior and our purview per the ordinance is limited to exterior alterations that require a building or zoning permit. So this portion, if the commission approves the current placement of the belfry tower and this section up here and the roof will still be within our purview. But essentially the north elevation will no longer be within our purview because it's an enclosed interior space. The applicant, both the owners of the building and the architect have indicated to me that no changes are proposed for that elevation.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the applicants who I believe are here in person. Welcome. I'm gonna turn the screen on. Screen is-
May I put this on the table here?
Yes.
This might be helpful in understanding the building a little bit better. Thank you.
Then let me pull up your information. And then just let me know when you want your slides changed.
Alrighty.
As soon as you start talking, and I will start. the timer.
Thank you.
So just to recap, collectively, you have 10 minutes altogether. And when you are ready to speak, if you would begin with your name and address, business addresses appropriate as well. Thank you.
Maybe we just start with introductions, Cleo.
Yes, first of all, thank you all for everything that you do. Watching you in action today has been really quite an education for me, but wonderful. Thank you for the support and considering our proposal. You know, I'm Cleo Parker Robinson. We're at 119 Park Avenue West, and I'm the founder. I'm the oldest one at this table. I've had the company for 53 years, and we've been in the shorter AME for almost 37 years. And we've been renovating and in the spirit of that wonderful historic church. And it's just really a wonderful opportunity to see that we tried to make it a destination nationally and internationally. And we're really thrilled to be able to look at the possibilities of what's going on with our wonderful space. So thank you.
Malik Robinson, I'm the executive director of Cleo Parker Robinson Dance, 119 Park Avenue West, Denver, Colorado, 80205.
And my name is John Kadricki. I'm with Fentress Architects. We're at 421 Broadway in Denver, 80203. And so again, thank you all. Brittany, that was an excellent recap of the project and the history on the project too. You know, I stated earlier, Cleo Parker Robinson Dance Company has been in this building and feels like it's really their home. We love this building. We understand that the historic nature of it, the historic and cultural aspects of the building, and we definitely have worked hard to try to maintain those as we went through our design. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the dance company. They are a 501c3, so a nonprofit. All of the monies that are for this project are donated. So we have a very tight budget, and Malik and Cleo have been working very hard to try to pull together some of the dollars for this project. And I think we're getting there, but that's always been a challenge for us as we've gone through the project. So that's one of the things. I just wanted to kind of recap a little bit about the history of us with the Preservation Commission and the staff. We had our first meeting with the staff in January of 20 and have been and understand that this church is very prominent as a historic structure. And we wanted to be sure that our design was compatible with that. And so that was one of the first things we did, was sit down with Abigail at the time and go through the design. We were obviously COVID hit, and so that delayed the project a bit. But we started again with our concept plan in November of 22 and went through that. And as Brittany showed, we did make modifications based on input from the staff. We reduced the height of that entry. We made the entry more transparent. We like to say that we're making as a light a touch as possible on the existing building. So all of the connections are cantilever connections and glazing connections between the two, as you can see on the model there. So our whole intention is to try to stay as far away from the existing building, but still maintain that enclosure. And at the same time, feature that wall as part of our lobby. I mean, that's really a big part of our design, is that sort of glazing that we embrace that existing wall with. That'll highlight that wall inside the interior of the lobby. So we'll have that. And as Brittany mentioned, this addition really does give us ADA accessibility for the entire facility. There was a question about whether we were demolishing that existing non-historic annex, and that is the case. And that's the case because what we'd like to do and what we're planning on is having a circulation system for, excuse me, both buildings, so that you can access by elevator or by stair and go into either the existing structure or the new addition. So that's the intention there. As we went through, we continued our discussions. We met with Abigail and made those revisions. We submitted a sort of an informal package for review by staff back at the time, back in March of 23. Received an email back from Abigail saying everyone was supportive of the direction the proposal is going and felt that landmark concerns had been addressed. And so we then made our formal submittal, and just recently received in May of this year, a request to try to bring our wall for the entry even further back from the main facade and try to honor the historic belfry corner. And you can see this, the sketch that we provided right here. The green area is the area that we reduced our lobby at the request of staff in the first go around. And then the blue area would be the reduction that staff is requesting today, or requesting in their report. And it's pretty obvious to us that that makes this lobby really not functional for the performance space. The performance space that you see at the top of the slide is about 240 seats. Right now, with the green reduction in the current design, we're at about 1,300 square feet for a lobby. And if we were to reduce it even further, we would reduce it by another 350 feet. So we'd be under roughly 900 square feet, 950 square feet for that lobby, which we feel is very inadequate for the use of the space. So that's sort of the history of our engagement with historic. And again, we thank you all for the comments and the engagement that we've had as we've gone through this process. So in the report, there are two guidelines cited that have asterisks. That's guideline 3.03 and guideline 3.12. Guideline 3.03 is design addition to reflect the character defining the features of historic structure. I think we've done that with our design in that we've used basically a glass box approach to try to mitigate the connection between the addition and the existing historic building, and again, feature the existing historic building. And we are, as Brittany mentioned, not modifying the existing building in any way except removing that existing annex building, the non-historic annex building. I'd like to say that we do have support for the building from Historic Denver. I believe there's a letter in your package stating that. I think we also have a gentleman online that from the State Historic Fund that supports this design as is as well. And in regards to the purview for the interior space, that's something that I think we can talk a little bit more about regarding whether we make some kind of a modification or at least some kind of a dedication to the preservation to maintain purview over that interior wall. I think that's a possibility if that would allow us to move ahead with the current design. So our request today is certainly, the staff added 2 conditions to their recommendation of approval. One was to provide additional details of the annex building, and we're very happy to do that. What we would request is that the submission that we've made is approved as is without moving back the exterior wall of the lobby based on our programmatic requirements. And I think that's all for our presentation today. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Again? Nick?
Yeah, I do. How important programmatically, I understand that you need enclosed lobby space just to function as an anti. But the area to the south of the proposed new vestibule where the label reception 181 is, that seems to be about 75 square feet. How important is that programmatically? Because, and I bring it up because I wonder if you've considered a notch there that would pay homage to the tower, top to bottom, and then you still maintain program space. And I don't know how the rest of the officials would feel about that, or how staff would feel about that. But how is that something you considered at some point?
We have, once we received the comment for a request to recess the entry wall even further, we did take a look at that. A little bit about the functionality of the space. The intention is that that's sort of a reception area. The use of this space has a lot to do with education. So there's dance classes from, toddlers all the way up to adults, as well as performances. So there's sort of 2 kinds of clienteles that we have. And so have somebody stationed at that location to direct people, because there's several of the dance studios are upstairs. So they have to direct them to the elevator and such. So that, and then the other reason was that because of the nature of the area, we were trying to eliminate sort of little nooks that can be attractive to homeless. Yeah, exactly, for security reasons. So that was another reason why we elected to submit the design as is.
One other consideration is that we've been envisioning this lobby to serve both of the historic building and then the new, not only the new theater, but those dance spaces that are on the upper levels. And right now within the theater, it serves as a place for field trips for students. So as we're thinking about this lobby space, we're thinking about it in terms of how it services both buildings and how we continue to make both of those buildings vibrant. And so I think that's when we saw that it was going to be, or there was a request for continued reduction. It's hard to see how we can make all of those spaces work. And I think with the historic building, we've been able to make that work for us. And I think it's important to note that before we launched this capital campaign, we did focus groups, we did community surveys. We wanted the community to tell us where they thought we would be. And they said that they wanted us in the historic church. The co-chair of our campaign is the First Lady of Dr. Timothy Tyler, who is the pastor of Shorter Community Church. And so they are deeply involved. And so I think, as we're kind of looking at all of the different angles of it and thinking about how we've been really the stewards of the building, that piece of it's important to us and remains part of the vision of how we continue to make it vibrant going forward. But we've had a number of limitations within that building, which is why, we're thinking now we can have concurrent programming, but we haven't had that ability to have concurrent programming because of the different levels and because of, the building built in 1925. But now with this new addition and this new lobby space, it gives us an opportunity to celebrate both the historic building and then looking forward to the new, but also continue to be a vibrant organization. We're still a small nonprofit, and these are very important concerns for us.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have one not specific to your application, but how does construction affect the winter performance of Granny?
That's the best question ever. We are really trying to imagine that, right? Yeah, I think that's why we're working so diligently on a time schedule here and budget so that we can make Granny make some sense there we've had Granny everywhere. We started Granny at our building, then it went to the Buell, then it went to the Denver Center, then it went to GU, and it will have to find a home for a hot second, but we need that time frame before we can even approach any other facility. But we love it in our home. But thank you. Yeah, I didn't. Oh, good. Yeah, I didn't know if anybody had seen the shorter and how it works, because I think the lobby has become really critical. Yeah, and it's tight. I just got a little nervous. I think we do all kinds of things. We're doing a lot of like our summer institute was with a lot of international artists that come in, and they're just so impressed with what we do with the space we're in now. And they go, and now you're going to have a really space that you can really work in, because we're just the seams right there. We have to have more space. So that's exciting, but I'm glad you get the Granny. That makes me excited, right? I've done it 31 years. It's about time I need to retire. It's time for me to retire.
Trips. And then I also took my granddaughter back the next day.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, well, having the children there and their parents in the lobby while they're waiting to get into class, I think is what was our concern.
I have one more than. What kind of glass are you expecting to use in that entrance? Is that it's going to be printed? Is it gonna
It's a ultra clear low E glass, low E coated glass.
So from a visual perspective, it's not going to be more reflective than regular glass.
Right. Right. Yeah, the intention is it to be very transparent.
So that even in the daytime, you can actually see.
Yes.
Which is going to be challenging.
Yes.
Yes.
It will definitely be reflective. Yes.
Okay.
And then what's the curtain wall system? Is it extruded aluminum?
Yes, it's extruded aluminum. We have a butt glazed horizontal and capped vertical. So mostly clear.
But not all glass.
Oh, it is all glass.
Not like a Pilkington.
No. We're butt glazed horizontally, and there will be caps vertically.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to public comments. As noted, we did receive a letter of support from Historic Denver. Do we have any others on the call who would like to make a comment? Yeah, Corbin. So Corbin, if you would begin with your name and address, and you have up to 2 minutes. Corbin, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Corbin, if you,
Is that any better?
yes,
Oh.
we can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, I got a prompt to join as a panelist, so maybe that changes
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
All right, hello, everyone. My name's Corbin Pugh. I work for the State Historical Fund, 1200 Broadway, Denver, Colorado, 80203. And yeah, I'll be very quick. I just wanted to say the State Historical Fund granted money to Shorter AME back in 2006, which resulted in a covenant, a 20-year covenant with the state. And that's just a measure to protect the state's investment in this building. And yeah, over the last 5 years, we've received updates and concept drawings and sketches from Ventress and basically have approved everything we've seen so far. There is, I will say, there's currently a set of drawings that we just received that we'll review and issue an actual formal memo. But based on the concepts we've seen going back to even October of 2018, we made similar comments, pushing this glass facade to the north, and just making sure the height of this structure was lower than the actual historic building. But yeah, we really have been pleased with the addition and excited about what it will do for the organization. So that's all I've got. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Don't think so. All right. Great. Staff, do you have a recap?
Yes, the applicant mentioned a dedication for the north wall. That's not something we would be able to manage or hold because that doesn't go with our ordinance. That's in our purview as limited to the exterior. But it could be something to explore with one of our many preservation nonprofits in the city, but just wanted to provide clarity that that's not something we could put the conditions on.
Right. Thank you. Okay, then I think we'll move into deliberation. Commissioners, did you think this met the guidelines or not? Graham?
I was trying to picture 200 people in my house, square footage wise, just understanding the needs of the lobby. And so I totally understand that programmatic need. And I think that, stepping back from the corner in that initial rendering, even where it does split the belfry, and Nick, I liked your suggestion, but I understand the security concerns as well. So I think knowing that that's such an important piece, but that the applicants have taken steps to address that and give that corner some of the prominence and articulation that it has, I feel generally pretty comfortable with things, but I'm curious to hear what others think as well.
Oh, I would support it as presented in the drawing, splitting the difference between the belfry from compromise with the applicant and understanding the importance of it. And part of my feeling with agreeing with this is the importance of keeping the dance company in the historic church as well, but allowing them growth into the future as an important cultural institution on its own to the city of Denver and the state of Colorado, of continuing to support that growth and, to thrive as a dance company into this century.
I will add to that. I think, I think this does meet guideline 3.12 as far as the addition is not in front of or flush with the primary facade any longer. As far as setting back this entrance and what is in our purview of the designation boundary. And that having it meet that middle between the two window openings on the belfry tower itself, still, even though, setting aside the transparency, you still get a sense of that kind of historic symmetry that you would have seen on the belfry tower by hitting it in the middle there. So I think it helps us still appreciate that small architectural detail.
So I would agree that I think this does meet the guidelines. I would support it.
One question I had, and it may be just a friendly question or comment, is the expansion joint detail of the roof and the head height between the exposed rafter tails and the top of the masonry of the windows. It's just a tight intersection there, which I'm sure has been studied.
Yes.
That'll be, I think, well done. Some that disappears and if it were to sort of get into the different details of that facade with the Rolock band over the top, there's some nice historic detail there as it relates to what will become the interior, but with that light touch and how that comes together. So just a, I guess, friendly comment on what that looks like in its ultimate detail. It's close.
Well, I agree with what Graham said. That's going to be a technically challenging thing to pull off. But it appears that it's been thought about well enough that the intent is to do it so that it is an elegant and functional set of details.
I think the cantilever helps a little bit there, right?
Yes.
Stepped back with the columns.
We've pushed our structural engineer as far as they'll go.
That's what they're there.
Yeah, right.
Any other comments you'd like to make? If not, would anyone like to make a motion?
So the motion is if we're agreeing to leave the facade like it is, we would not have the first condition.
Correct. It would just be the one about details for
Right.
the rear, not historic condition.
And I think with the confirmation it's being demolished, is that something that staff would still need in writing, or is that?
It sounds like it's still something they would like some details on, because the condition as it is for either proposed modifications or demolition. Got it. Exactly.
Yeah, because it does connect currently, so we don't need to know exactly what.
I do need to say that I've used that existing example of an addition as an appropriate addition to a historic building. But I photographed it, so even if it's demolished. we can
You
still-
have the documentation.
Yeah.
I believe the state does too, for its covenant.
So, Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application number 2023-COA -271 for the side addition at 119 West Park Avenue as per design guidelines 3.1 through 3.6, 3.8, 3.12, 3.13. Character defining features for the shorter AME Church Cleo Parker Robinson Dance landmark structure, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following condition: to provide additional details for the proposed modifications or demolition of the existing rear non-historic condition.
Thank you, Gary. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Great. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Great, the motion carries, passes.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, we have reached the end of our design guidelines. I think we just wanted to briefly mention that our next meeting is next week. It is
Yeah, we
not.
shifted with the port, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, because we had an adjusted schedule this month for the 4th of July holiday. However, we will need to elect a chair pro tem for that meeting. And I really need everyone to come. So I'm taking attendance now to see if you can come, and then also consider who you would like to elect pro tem, and I can help support whoever is elected. I will hold a meeting with you to preview the agenda. I will send you a helpful guide on how to pro tem a meeting.
So obviously the reason why is because neither Julie nor I will be.
That's
not acceptable.
Are you allowed to miss the second or third one?
Well, obviously, somebody who's not here today should be.
Well, I nominate Graham because he's done it before.
So we'll have to do it at the next meeting. I'll have to.
I'll pre-nominate you.
So I can be here. next week.
Because
So,
we nominate you once.
Yes.
yeah, I
Yes,
walked
we
in
did.
late, so I
And he
did all right.
Um,
He survived.
especially considering the.
And yes, like,
I'm used to that. He wants to do a meeting in control.
I'm committing to
Yep.
being here.
I'll be there,
I
Kevin.
appreciate all. We just need at least one more commissioner that's not here to come. So we'll be good.
See, if we were still doing it virtually, she could call in from Iceland.
I mean, I wouldn't want to.
And the Blue Lagoon. It's not the Blue Lagoon, is it?
Yeah, it is.
is.
But we do return to our normal schedule in August, and it will be our normal schedule for the rest of the year on the first and third Tuesday.
All right, well, thank you. I will now close this meeting at 3:42.
Brittany, the only challenge